I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is waiting too long to pull back. It's not because they don't see what's happening. Most of the times they do. They notice the inconsistency, they notice the shifts, they notice that they're confused, they notice the confusion. But the problem is that instead of deciding, they start explaining. They can't make a decision. And before they know it, they've spent months trying to understand something that they already know, something they already understood. So that's why today I want to talk about the exact moment you should pull back. And this is not games. This is not games. This is not matching energy. This is actually discernment. This is discernment. Why people wait too long? Most people think that they stay because they are hopeful. I don't think that's the whole story. I don't think that's all true. I don't think that's the whole story. I think many people stay because they are thoughtful. I think they stay because they understand. I think they stay because they see the nuance. They understand context. They understand the context. They understand that people have fears. People have wounds. They understand that people have traumas. They understand that people have difficult seasons. So instead of them making a decision, they keep looking for that context. They keep, trying to understand someone that they already understand. And understanding someone and staying with them is not the same thing. You can understand someone, doesn't mean you have to stay with them. Sometimes people stay because they are still gathering information. They still want to know. They want to know more. They're still giving because they understand context, so they are still gathering information. Long after they've already gathered information, long after they already know what's happening, they are still there. Understanding versus deciding, right? And this is a big realization for me. You can understand exactly why someone behaves the way they do. You can understand their fears, you can understand their history, you can understand their limitations, you can understand their realities, and you can still decide that this dynamic doesn't work for me. Because you're talking about yourself here. A lot of people, a lot of emotionally aware people get trapped here because they think understanding should automatically create patience. The fact that you understand doesn't mean patience has to follow. At some point, the question stops being, why are they like this? You're not asking yourself, why are they acting the way they do? You're asking yourself, what you should be asking yourself is, what am I going to do with what I have consistently experienced? What am I going to do with what this person has consistently shown me? Now, let's talk about patterns vis-a-vis isolated moments. One bad day is not a pattern. Someone can have a bad day, or a day can be bad. That's not a pattern. One delayed reply is not a pattern. If you have one misunderstanding, that's not a pattern. This is because, and why should you make this distinction? Why should you be clear what is a pattern and what is like an isolated moment? Because this is exactly where it's so important, because this is where discernment is not, because discernment is not about being reactive. This is where discernment becomes clear. Discernment is not about being reactive. You're not responding to the situation. That's not discernment. Discernment is paying attention. You're paying attention to what repeats. You're paying attention to repetition. Patterns can tell you things that isolated moments can tell you. When something is repeated, that's a pattern. The pattern is when you have the same issue, the same confusion, the same inconsistency, different day. That's when you should start paying attention. That's when you should oh yeah, this is a pattern. And that's right there. You've discerned what exactly is happening in that moment. So that's how it works. So you cannot mix up patterns and isolated moments. Isolated moments only trigger anxiety, but you have to look at, is this just a one-time thing, or is this like a repetition? And you also have to be emotionally regulated so that you don't get triggered often and easily. Now, when does inconsistency become information? When does this inconsistency come? When does this pattern comes and say, oh, this is inconsistency. This is not an isolated moment. This is a pattern, and this pattern is inconsistency. So When does inconsistency become information? This is where so many people, a lot of people get stuck because they see inconsistency, then they start collecting more evidence. They start saying, oh, let's see how it responds to next week. Let's see how it responds to the solution. You've already seen the inconsistency. Why are you still collecting more evidence? They're waiting, more explaining, more benefit of the doubt. And what they don't realize is that the inconsistency itself is all the information that you need. You don't need more. You already have information. You already know what's happening. You already discerned. And this is not that people cannot have off days. People definitely can have off days. But what we are talking about, where inconsistency becomes information, is when you have repeated inconsistency. That tells you something about what you can realistically expect from that person. So when there's a repeated inconsistency, you already know this is realistically what I need to expect. You're not judging anyone. You're not trying to feel like, oh, like you're not doing any of that. You're not even like trying to evaluate your situation. None of that. That really, really not your business. The part that you're focusing on is what can you realistically expect from this person? Not what you think they'll be, not what you feel like under different circumstances they might be. What can I expect from this person, and does that regulate me? So the goal here is to see clearly. So when you see clearly, that pattern, that's the answer. It already tells you everything that you need to know about that person, about what you realistically expect from them. Why exhaustion should not be your decision point. Why you shouldn't wait till when you're exhausted to make a decision. Most times, when we're in situations like that, we don't leave when we gain clarity. We don't leave when we understand what's happening. That's not when we leave. We leave when we become exhausted. And that's not the same thing. You are not doing the same thing. You are not dealing with something the same way. Living when you know something and living when they exhaust you is not the same. And they don't actually come out or give you the same results. By the time that exhaustion arrives, resentment has been built, frustration is there, disappointment is all over the place. Now you are reacting. You are no longer deciding. You're reacting from resentment, from frustration, from disappointment. You've already worked yourself up and now you're reactive. One of the most powerful shifts is learning to act when something becomes clear. Not when it becomes unbearable, not when you are tired of it. Exhaustion is not discernment, that's delayed discernment. If you have to wait till you're exhausted to actually make a decision, that's delayed discernment. Now, let's look at proactive boundaries because I've mentioned being reactive. What's being proactive? How do you actually maintain proactive boundaries? Looking at it against reactive boundaries. Most people create boundaries after they've been hurt repeatedly, after something has been happening repeatedly. That's reactive. You're responding to a situation. Proactive boundaries happen much earlier. You notice a pattern, you notice a dynamic, you notice a repeated issue, and you respond before you are emotionally depleted. And this is where I say, know who you are, know what your boundary is before anyone shows up. So that when they come, you're not matching their energy, you're not responding to a fashion of them. They're meeting you where you are. And you're like, you're not meeting me. If you can't meet me where I am, this is a boundary. I'm not going to overextend to make this happen. So that's more of a proactive boundary than a reactive boundary. And it's okay to have reactive boundaries. It's okay to react to something and say, oh, this is where I draw the line. But the part where you want to move forward, where you want to actually create a shift, is being able to create a boundary, know who you are, draw your line in the sand before anyone shows up. And this is not anger. You're not angry at someone. So that way you're not angry at somebody. You're not trying to punish anyone. It's not revenge. You're not doing any of these things. No, you already know the information. You already know what's happening. And your boundary is simply a response to that. Enforcing your boundary and sticking strictly to it is there to just say, okay, yeah, that information. You're not, not any of that. So a boundary is simply a response to information. That's all. How do secure people leave earlier? I think secure people are often misunderstood. People assume that they leave because they care less. I don't think that's true. Oh yeah, It's not even true. Secure people don't leave, don't they're not it's not they don't it's not because they don't care. As a matter of fact, they do care. They leave earlier because they believe what they see sooner. They don't waste their time. They when they see something they believe it. And they don't need months of confirmation. They don't need endless evidence. They don't need complete certainty. They pay attention to the patterns, they communicate, they observe. I notice certain things. I notice this. I notice that. They will communicate once and that's it. They observe. So it's not because they don't care. They actually do care. They care about themselves. They care about who they are. They care about their own mental well-being. They care about their own emotional regulation. So they do care. So sometimes even when you have to like enforce a boundary, especially when you like someone or anything, or you are, you want the situation to work out, it can be painful. It's sometimes painful. That point where you have to like say, "Oh, sorry to see you go." That grief, it's there. But the decision is you are who you are and you're not trying to match anyone's energy. You are where you are and you need to be secure in where you are. You also need to be regulated. So this is why I think that the exact moment you should pull back is usually much earlier than you think. It's not when you're angry, it's not when you're exhausted, it's not when they've actually repeatedly, crossed your boundaries, it's not when you finally had enough. It's when the pattern is clear. When you discerned that the pattern is clear, when you knew what this is the information, this is who this person is, this is how they are, this is what I should realistically expect. That was when you should have pulled back, when you realize that, oh, this thing that they're giving is not what I want. That's when you should have realistically pulled back, not when you're exhausted. So it's not, you're not trying to just leave everyone quickly and just drop. No, 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 no. You're seeing clearly and you're doing what works for you. And once you see clearly, you stop arguing with, what has already been revealed. You stop arguing with what you know. You can see and you can actually make your decision to actually pull back. Thank you very much for watching this episode. If if this conversation resonates, please stay here with me. See you next week. Bye.